We do have breaking news just moments ago. Microsoft is to boost
it is the embryonic version of online artificial intelligence.
Microsoft,
the early
meanwhile,
frontrunner that
reportedly
has
investing
just
a whopping
secured a $10 billion shot in the arm from Microsoft.
And I've never seen that type of diffusion. To your point about the Industrial Revolution, Klaus, I would say, we're still waiting for the Industrial Revolution to reach some large parts of the world 250 years after. The internet maybe took 30 years, maybe the cloud and mobile took 15 years, and now I think we're talking months. Where are we on the S-curve? And interestingly enough, I sort of think about it as there's one S-curve where we are at the tip, where it's now about deployment, diffusion, mainstream. In fact, one of the things I think a lot about is in a time like this where, let's just say, with all of the macroeconomic challenges, or take even inflation, I think it's showtime for us even in the tech industry to really say, okay, how can software, for example, be a deflationary force so that every business can do more with less? So there's one side of it which is real deployment of technology so that we can use the most malleable resource we have in order to tame some of the inflationary forces. A good example, to just give you one, is, there's a, take what Unilever has done with their lights out manufacturing with digital twins. It was great during the pandemic as a way to do manufacturing remotely, but more importantly, in silico, they're able to simulate and reduce energy cost, water wastage, and other wastage. So therefore, that's a good example of doing more with less. So that's one side. The other side is something like artificial intelligence. If you look at it, it's at the beginning of a new S-curve. And that's the fun part of being in the tech industry, where there are certain technologies that are reaching maturity that need to get deployed and show real results. And then we now have essentially an emergence of a completely new set of technology, which I think is going to be a revolutionary.
You say it will be a revolution. I think we all feel it will be a revolution, but there is a certain fear, particularly about artificial intelligence. People feel it dehumanizes us and so on. Now, what steps do we need actually to make sure that those technologies, particularly artificial intelligence, remain society-oriented and human-centered?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great point, and I think a very important consideration, and quite frankly, a design consideration. In fact, one of the things we think a lot about is how to deploy this technology to empower human beings to do more. So, for example, like on New Year's Day, I saw this tweet by Andrej Karpathy, who was an ex-founder of the autopilot group at Tesla, who's an AI developer. And so he sort of referenced perhaps the biggest product that made a difference in his life in the last 12 months was the GitHub Copilot we had launched last year. So here's a software developer using tools and saying, now GitHub Copilot is generating 80% of his code. So that doesn't mean Andrej is not writing new code and being at his creative best. It just so happens that now he has 80% leverage in doing what he's doing. He's still the pilot. He does have a co-pilot. So that's why I even like the branding of what we did there, because I think it helps put the pilot in charge and the co-pilot helping the pilot. For me, perhaps was the most revealing of what can happen. I was in India at the beginning of January. And I saw this demo, Klaus. In India, one of the things that's very exceptional that's happening is digital public goods that are getting built for identity, payment, many systems. And one of the digital public goods that's getting built is for language translation, right? So basically they have an open source project so that anybody building any application in India can translate between any language in any Indian language. So a demo I saw was a rural Indian farmer trying to access some government program, right? So he just expressed a complex thought in speech in one of the local languages. That got translated and interpreted by a bot, and a response came back saying, go to a portal and here is how you'll access the program. he said, look, I'm not going to go to the portal. I want you to do this for me. And it completed it. And the reason why it was able to complete it was because a developer building it had taken GPT and trained it over all of the Government of India documents and then scaffolded it with this speech recognition software. So think about what that meant, right? That basically meant that a large model, a foundational model that was developed in the West Coast of the United States a few months before, had made its way to a developer in India who then sort of added value to it to make a difference in a remote villager's life.
So therefore, I look at it and say it doesn't matter if you are a knowledge worker or a frontline worker, use these tools to actually then get more leverage in your job. If Andrej as a software developer in AI can do that, why can't all of us have access to it? If that farmer in rural India can use this technology to get their job done, that's the way. I think the best way to prepare for it is to sort of not bet against this technology and this technology helping you in your job, in your business process. And especially at a time like this, Matt, like here we are, right? We have inflation, we have all of this macroeconomic headwinds. Doing more with less is perhaps more at a premium. And so if I find any technology that allows us to be more productive, let's take that. And then let's create that economic surplus and then talk about how to distribute it in all the ways. And there are many, many mechanisms one can talk about.
Remember in 2007, 2008, the birth, so that was the last time I would say we had major platforms being born, right? The mobile platform and the cloud platform. And, in the last 15 years, they've gone mainstream. We're still, I would say, still in the throes of its penetration, but it's significantly understood that this technology is making a real difference. I think that the AI piece and this particular generation of AI is showing that type of, I would say, platform shift. And just to kind of give you an intuition, Klaus, as to what exactly happened. Like, why are we talking about AI in January of 23? After all, we were talking about it last year, but there seems to be, even I had not expected, if you had asked me last month coming to WEF, would I be talking about AI this much? But it turns out that, even the ChatGPT moment has, I think, captured people's imagination. But we started the work with OpenAI, I would say, 3.5 years ago, when we started building the AI supercomputer in Azure to train these large models. So, in fact, the workload of this particular form of AI requires a complete rethink even in the system architecture of the computing infrastructure. And we did that hard work and trained these models. And when you look at GPT-3 to 3.5 to what's coming, these are non-linear developments. So they're showing emergent capability. And I'm not saying this is the last model architecture innovation. There'll be more to come. But the fact is that these things by themselves are becoming platforms that I think truly can make a difference. And I've never seen that type of diffusion. To your point about the Industrial Revolution, Klaus, I would say, we're still waiting for the Industrial Revolution to reach some large parts of the world 250 years after. The internet maybe took 30 years. Maybe the cloud and mobile took 15 years. And now I think we're talking months.